I was only 15 when I started my first job. Being financially independent seemed to be one of the two big goals of my life. First was to study from dusk till dawn, and second was to be able to earn enough money to support my ambitions, my goals, my family, and our livelihood. And of course, I wanted to be able to afford fries and coffee without inducing a UN level debate. I come from Karachi. It's called City of Lights, as Pakistani people like to call it, and refusing to accept the reality that there is no light anymore. I am a marketeer. I live and breathe advertising and creativity. Life back in Pakistan had a different framework. Every member of my family was struggling to make ends meet, both financially and emotionally. Life back home was tough, money was tight. We budgeted so hard, even our feelings were on an emotional budget. Because you see, the topic of money was never far from the table. Electricity bill was like a horror story before bedtime. But these discussions left a lasting impact on our life. It did not only affect our food, it also affected our minds. And that was the time where I began to step into this rat race, a race where everybody is sprinting. Nobody knows where the finish line is. We all are too tired to ask for it. And I stepped into this with this list of milestones to achieve in very little time to do so, and somehow with the perception that someday I am going to win this race. Little did I know that what we lose in this is way more than what we earn out of it. Well, anyhow, without that realization, I stepped into this new chapter of my life, which had little to no space for creativity. As a young girl, I had always wanted to remain engaged with art. I was passionate about painting, about sketching, about reading, about drafting poems and poetries. But over time, my grades replaced my doodles, and spreadsheets took over my poetry. Creativity did not only take a step back, it was thrown out of the car, somewhere on a highway, somewhere between urgent assignments and job applications. Well, in my family, we did not do art or had hobbies. All of these things required time and money and life with somewhat less responsibilities. And we were taught not to waste money. Every single penny needs to be well budgeted and spent. And spending money on our personal pleasures, that's not how people in middle-class families survive. They plan their next move, their savings account, their next milestone. We were the kind of family who would not only reuse the wrapping paper, we would gently undo the tape, treating it like heart surgery and savoring it like it's national treasure. Well, I began with the mindset that hard work always pays off. So I began to cross off these milestones that I had with me. I got scholarships to do my bachelor in business in one of the top business schools of Pakistan. I got another scholarship to do my master's in Europe in this very same university. I started working with some of the big brands out there. And for a brief moment of life, I felt like I'm really, really flying. Everything is great. Everything is so on track. What could go wrong? As I continued my search to learn more and grow more and eventually to earn more, it hit me that it had been years that my sketchbook has remained nothing but plain white papers. All my love for reading and sketching, all of it seemed to be like a thing of the past. And I thought to myself that life was not generous enough to give me enough time to do things that I really adored, that I really wanted to do. Or maybe I was not generous enough to myself to do those things. But I continued the grind, continued the hard work, and there came a point in my life where my routine looked like work, study, sleep, repeat, work, study, sleep, repeat. I would casually squeeze in eating in this, but very casually, not planned. There was no space for anything else. And taking an hour for myself meant I'm going to lose out 100 out of 100 in an exam, or I cannot just not respond to an email. In my mind, if I do not respond to this email, the world will fall apart and aliens will invade this planet. And I couldn't just let this happen, right? So I went on. I continued my hard work. I continued to roll with it. And over time, gradually, I burnt out. I disconnected from everything and everybody. I got more anxious. I got more depressed. And I felt like I was a walking, talking, low battery notification for everybody. And I knew I was not alone. In today's age, one of the most at-risk age populations are young adults, typically defined as individuals who are 18 and above. And while this increase in anxiety and depression, it is a complicated issue altogether and has many, many causes. Major contributing factors include greater levels of academic stress and economic stress. And yes, I'm talking about the same group of people who can figure out a new phone in less than 5 minutes, but cannot figure out how to relax. And well, this fears me even further, because this leads us to thinking that the idea of more is dangerous. More money, more degrees, more this, more that. The constant readjustment of our benchmarks and our milestones, it is dangerous. It does not only affect our mental health, it also affects our physical being. We start to tie our self-worth and our value with how productive we are, or how fast we achieve our dream job or a perfect GPA, that we think to ourselves that once I get there, I'm going to be happier. It's an adult version of saying that once I get this toy, I will never ask for anything else again. It's a lie. It's a big fat lie. There is even a name for this. It's called an impact bias. It's the gap between what we expect we would feel and what we eventually end up feeling. There's a research by Harvard psychologist Dan Gilbert who spoke about this and said that we, as human beings, we overestimate the emotional impact of future events, which encourages us to think that all these hours that we are burning into creating this most mind-blowing resume may not end up giving us the joy that we are expecting out of it. And don't get me wrong, goals are powerful. They drive us, they help us grow, but psychologist Donald Campbell said it the best, that the direct pursuit of happiness is a recipe for an unhappy life. Because constant happiness is not real, at least not the ones that come from comparing yourself with others or achieving more than what you did last year. On the contrary, you step back, you try and strive a balance between your choice of creativity and your long-term goals. Now, some of you may think, what do you mean your choice of creativity? Or may even think if you are a creative person to begin with. Well, let me assure you, you most definitely are one, even if you think you're not. As part of my advertising journey, I meet a lot of people who think that they're not creative, and their definition of being somebody who's creative involves someone who can paint and sketch and be very splashy and outspoken, right? But it's not that simple, is it? It's not that simple and straightforward. Creativity is defined as something that is useful and novel, something that can be applicable to any industry, any job, any part of your life, no matter how major and minute. Well, if you know how to bake, if you run, you exercise, you collect plants, or you organize your bookshelf by color, then congratulations, Picasso. That's creativity. I have seen people cook in ways that would absolutely blow one's minds away, or their digestive system, depending on which South Asian dish you try. Our spice tolerance is quite high, I agree. But the list is indefinite for you to pick from, which leaves me the urge for you to at least pick one. We think that the cost of adding our passion, our creativity today, is going to somehow affect the future tomorrow. Whereas we have seen people all across the world, be it famous or not, to be using their ways of approaching creativity into changing the entire world. Creativity and passion allows you to imagine better possibilities and turn them into realities, transforming industries and life and planet. All the major inventions, be it wheel or the internet, started with a creative idea. Well, all the scientific breakthroughs that you see has something to do with how novel and creatively a scientist approaches the laws of nature. Einstein's theory of relativity required advanced mathematical skills, yes. But he also needed imagination to take him to think beyond what he had at that time. And let's be honest, nobody discovers the theory of relativity while doing their taxes. I hope not. And in his own words, creativity is seeing what everybody else sees and thinking what nobody else ever thought before. Creativity and passion fuels economic growth. All the great startups that you see all around the world, they started with a creative act. Social change depends on creativity because it encourages you to speak, protest, and challenge the status quo and imagine better futures. All of this requires us to think beyond the academic books and corporate walls. And while I speak of such big changes, I would love to quote Darren Hardy and his wise words that you will never change your life unless you change something you do daily. The secret of success lies in your daily routine. So where does it leave us? Find contentment within yourself and start taking part in things that may not look good in the resume, even if that is for 5 minutes a day. Walking with contentment does not mean you don't have goals or you do not compete anymore. It simply means that you do not punish yourself for taking part in things that make you feel joyful and whole. Growth for this young kid meant sketching for hours and hours without thinking if she was productive enough. Growth for this young kid meant making a happy, colorful mess, and if it turned out great, then she would burden her shoulders with pride and perhaps do a hair flip. I have begun to sketch again. I've picked up my brushes again, and I still love learning. I still love growing. I still love building, but now the definition of growth for me, it's very different than how it was a decade ago. So the big question is, where do we begin? As you leave today and head back into your wonderfully chaotic lives, I want you to take just one small question with you. What's the one thing I loved doing before life got too busy to love it? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I let you go create something beautiful or wildly unproductive. Either way, it's going to be a win. Thank you so much.